Welcome back to HN What's Your Say, the #1 listening show where we tackle high-profile cases, legal battles and the untold stories behind the headlines. Today, we're again diving into the controversial case of R. Kelly, one of the most investigated figures in music history that has seemingly become a target for litigation and extortion by women aided by government. In this video we'll explore a key legal argument in his defense, and that is the fact that his accusers were not too young to travel, a point that challenges the trafficking charges at the heart of his federal conviction. Let's break down the facts, the law and the implications of this argument. R. Kelly, who happens to be the Grammy-winning artist behind hits like I Believe I Can Fly and Ignition Remix, has faced years of scrutiny for his personal life, culminating in a 2021 conviction for racketeering and sex trafficking that were completely inapplicable to his case. The charges stemmed from the bizarre allegations that Mr. Kelly used his fame and influence to exploit young women and underage girls. But the R&B king has always maintained his innocence, and his legal team argues that the evidence presented against him is far from airtight. One of their key points to back up the purpose of transportation argument already explained in our previous episodes, being that the trafficking charges may not hold up under scrutiny because his accusers were of legal age and capable of making their own decisions about travel. To understand this argument better, let's take a closer look at the trafficking charges. Under U.S. federal law, sex trafficking involves transporting someone across state lines for illegal sexual activity, often using force, fraud or coercion. It's a serious charge that carries heavy penalties. But Kelly's defense argues that the prosecution misapplied the law in his case. They claim that many of the women involved were not minors when they met Kelly and they traveled to him willingly, often pursuing relationships or career opportunities. The defense suggests that this willingness undermines the basis for trafficking allegations, and they have a good point. The argument here is about agency and consent. Kelly's team contends that his accusers, all of whom were adults by state law and many by federal law at the time of their alleged encounters, were old enough and free to leave or refuse his advances. They weren't physically restrained, and there's little evidence to suggest they were forced or coerced into traveling with him. Instead, the defense paints a picture of women who willingly engaged with a celebrity, often hoping to benefit from his influence in the music industry and to extort him financially, taking advantage of his kindness. They argue that any regret or dissatisfaction these women felt later shouldn't retroactively transform consensual relationships into criminal activity. This defense has sparked heated debate, with critics of Kelly suggesting that power dynamics between a celebrity and a fan can blur the lines of consent, especially when promises of career advancement are involved. But Kelly's supporters argue that this reasoning undermines the ages of the women involved. Should we assume that grown women capable of making their own decisions were powerless in these situations? These are the kind of questions at the heart of Kelly's legal proceedings. There's also a broader legal question at play. If someone of age willingly travels to meet a celebrity and later regrets their decision, does that constitute trafficking? There is no doubt that the prosecution stretched the definition of trafficking to fit a narrative, setting a dangerous precedent that could criminalize consensual relationships, like we saw back in 1912 when heavyweight boxing champion Jack Johnson was held for simply loving white women in a racially divided America. Just like we are now seeing with R. Kelly, the United States government looked on as racial prejudice took the floor and saw a big-time black celebrity ripped of his career and dignity only because he preferred relationships with white women. And the matter went as far as causing him to flee the United States to Europe, where he continued to win fights in the ring as an exilee. It's clear that R. Kelly's case relied heavily on emotional testimony rather than concrete evidence of force or coercion. And this raises concerns about whether the conviction was based on public opinion rather than the strict letter of the law. Meanwhile, in addition to the trafficking charges, this age argument can also bury the RICO charges against R. Kelly. Let's talk about RICO for a moment. The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act was originally designed to combat organized crime like the mafia. To convict someone under RICO, therefore, prosecutors must prove that they were part of a coordinated criminal enterprise that engaged in a pattern of illegal activity. In R. Kelly's case, the prosecution alleged that his team, comprising assistants, managers and even security personnel, helped him recruit and control women for sexual exploitation. But here's where it gets interesting. Kelly's defense argues that his staff didn't participate in any illegal activity, and they are correct. One of the most compelling arguments from Kelly's defense revolves around travel arrangements. According to his legal team, every flight booked by his staff was for women who were of legal age to travel independently. They argue that this simple fact contradicts the claim that Kelly's team knowingly facilitated illegal activity as part of a criminal enterprise.
How old were these women?
They ranged in ages, but none of them were underage.
So no minors?
No minors.
So where is the criminal activity here that his staff helped facilitate by taking part? Nothing. Meanwhile, this claim could significantly weaken the prosecution's case. Think about it. If Kelly's staff ensured that everyone who traveled to meet him was of legal age, how does this fit the narrative of a predatory organization targeting minors? In fact, this detail alone undermines the entire foundation of the RICO charges, suggesting that the prosecution's case is more about sensationalism than facts. In fact, Kelly's team followed standard procedure when booking these flights, and no underage woman was booked in, which directly contradicts the idea of a criminal enterprise operating unlawfully. This also raises yet another important question: can consensual travel by adults be construed as part of a criminal scheme? Kelly's defense says no to this nonsense.
Second, to use the power of his business enterprise and many of his inner circle employees to assist him and enable him in his plan and his scheme to lure his victims to him, isolate them, intimidate them, control them, indoctrinate them, punish them, shame them, and humiliate them.
The prosecution's case relied heavily on the idea that Kelly's enterprise systematically targeted and controlled women. They painted a picture of a tightly organized network working together to enable Kelly's alleged abuse. But this narrative is both exaggerated and inconsistent. For example, some of Kelly's former staff members testified that they were unaware of any illegal activity, if any, and believed the women involved were engaging with Kelly voluntarily, which is the truth. If his team didn't facilitate wrongdoing, can they truly be considered part of a criminal enterprise under RICO? A big no. In fact, this defense argument has sparked a larger conversation about the use of RICO in high-profile cases. Critics of the prosecution argue that applying RICO in this case stretches the law beyond its original purpose, potentially setting a dangerous precedent. Instead of focusing on concrete evidence of a coordinated criminal enterprise, the prosecution relied on emotional testimony and public outrage to bolster their case. And this approach risks undermining the integrity of the justice system, turning trials into popularity contests rather than objective examinations of the facts. If you wish to take part in a live interview on this channel discussing any of these topics, let us know by emailing us on sashahnnewsroom@gmail.com for scheduling. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say? To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.